For nigh on a decade now, the corporate world has gone all in on DEI, and Hollywood has been no exception, and Disney in particular was leading the charge. Now they're all backtracking, blaming Trump for doing so, but behind closed doors they're elated, because now they have an excuse for doing what they had no choice but to do anyway. Let's dive in. In the last few years, there have been rainbow flags on businesses everywhere, and corporations large and small pledged their allegiance to the DEI cause in everything from the corporate vision to the first thing you see on their websites and stores. But now, suddenly, they're walking it back. Even BlackRock is seemingly backtracking. And I stress seemingly, because with BlackRock there may be more to that, but they're backtracking enough that the Wall Street Journal ran the story, BlackRock's woke era is over. Asset manager has exited climate groups and eliminated diversity targets as it tries to end ESG controversy. That would be because for the most part, DEI practices are not just bad for business because they push hiring based on identity rather than skill, but they're outright illegal to boot as prospective employees are actively discriminated against based on their immutable characteristics of being too white, too male, or too straight. Indeed, this article states, red states have passed dozens of anti-ESG laws. More than a dozen state attorneys general have targeted BlackRock over its ESG practices, and the Republican-led House of Representatives has subjected large asset managers to hearings and subpoenas. But let's focus on Hollywood, which has really taken a tumble over their DEI practices. As we've covered in multiple earlier videos, Hollywood's DEI practices have led to skilled talent being let go or not hired at all because they were too male, pale, and stale. And in some cases, even gay talent were fired because they weren't quite gay enough. No joke. But the problem for Hollywood is that the pool of people that have the talent needed is a small one to begin with, and when everyone demands that half their talent come from so-called underrepresented groups, which in reality are wildly overrepresented relative to population, there simply aren't many enough within those groups that also have the skill and experience required to fill the positions needed. But instead of amending the DEI requirements, they instead reduced the level of qualifications needed and filled up the ranks with activists, which is how movies and absolute disasters like Wish happened. See the videos linked to in the description for more on that. Beyond Bud Light and Target, which still hasn't recovered and never will from their DEI ventures, DEI has also played a major hand in the failure of Marvel, Star Wars, and Doctor Who, so the powers that be were already moving away from these practices which so obviously didn't work. Question is, how can they backtrack after virtue signaling as hard as they did? If only they had an excuse for doing what they were going to do anyway. Well, cue the Variety article, Hollywood ditches DEI to avoid Donald Trump's wrath. That's the perfect excuse right there. The article reads, in 2023, Warner Bros. Discovery launched its Diversity Digest, a quarterly update on the company's DEI efforts. The first installment highlighted Latino representation in Blue Beetle and home renovation show Rico to the Rescue. But after regular updates in 2024, the digest went silent after the election of President Trump. Last week, the feature was dropped from the company's DEI page, along with Warner Bros. Discovery's commitments to equity and diversity outreach, as the company narrowed its focus to inclusion. The move came as Trump has sought to stamp out DEI programs at the federal level and threatened civil and criminal investigations of private companies. Last month, the Federal Communications Commission opened an investigation of Comcast, the parent of NBC Universal, and MSNBC for possibly pursuing invidious forms of discrimination under the banner of DEI. Bullying is causing a lot of companies to reassess, says Verna Myers, former head of inclusion at Netflix. Most smart companies are just trying to figure out how far this is going to go. They're trying to stay out of the crosshairs. Well, I'm sure they would like audiences to return as well, because if Hollywood, and indeed the gaming industry for that matter, should have learned anything in the past few years, It was that seeing yourself represented on screen, or showing what the world actually looks like, hasn't made the biggest franchises in history any bigger. On the contrary, it made them contract. The go-to example is Marvel. When they made it female-centric, the female audience was the first to check out. On the topic of Marvel, the article continues. Among the companies changing their approach to DEI are the Walt Disney Company, which recently announced it was ending Reimagine Tomorrow, an initiative intended to promote stories from underrepresented communities. Now that's a huge win for audiences everywhere right there, and for Disney themselves. Reimagine Tomorrow may sound like a nice idea on paper, but in its execution, it was possibly the single most destructive program Disney ever had, crippling every aspect of the company. The article continues, and Disney is not alone. Amazon and, just like Week, Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery walked back programs that embedded DEI in hiring and promotion practices. Good. That means no more illegal discrimination. To it, the article carries on, Disney has played an outsized role in culture wars, so its decision was particularly thrilling for conservatives. America First Legal, which has launched numerous efforts to challenge corporate DEI policies, hailed the move as a major victory. Disney has finally backed down after years of treating people differently based on characteristics like race and sex, says Will Skolinos, counsel for the organization. Then the article paints the picture that this is all Trump's doing. But in reality, Hollywood was going this direction anyway, as the article also says. Even before Trump retook power, several high-profile DEI executives left studios in 2023. The Inclusion Rider, a contractual tool allowing top talent to ensure greater diversity in productions, never drew much buy-in. Only a handful of creatives, such as Michael B. Jordan and Brie Larson, invoked the provision. Some fear the trend away from DEI will accelerate now that Trump has turned it into a dirty word. Well, to be fair, most people paying attention considered both DEI and ESG to be dirty words long before the return of Trump. And indeed, others feel that reflecting the population might be the best way forward, though they use an unfortunate choice of words, with the article saying, others are confident that companies will continue to recognize that diversity and inclusion are in their long-term interests. The article concludes, it's almost impossible for entertainment companies to withdraw holistically from the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, Meyer says. There's no way you're going to compete without creating the kind of authentic programming where people feel reflected. Stacey Smith of USC's Annenberg Inclusion Initiative agrees, saying companies have bigger problems than the chaos in Washington. It's the audience that the C-suite should fear the most. Indeed. And if the audience has shown anything, it is that they don't care for excessive DEI. They never asked for it, and they punished Hollywood hard when they got it. Now, let's see if Hollywood is able to put itself back into the mindset of 15 years ago, when none of this was a problem. Do you think they can do that, or will they go too far in either direction? And if they do, who will they blame? Let me know in the comments.